My daughter screamed and tried to set my house on fire while I was sleeping. She forgot that I used to be a fire marshal. I woke to the sound of sloshing in the hallway and that sweet, sick smell no one ever forgets once they've worked a scene. Gasoline blooming in the summer heat like rotten flowers. The old instincts lit up inside me faster than any match could. I rolled out of bed without turning on a light, feet finding the cold floorboards, hand sliding under the nightstand for the small flashlight I keep there. I stayed low, drew one breath through my shirt, and listened. A sob. Then another. My Laura. The tremor in it took me back 27 years to the night she'd woken from a thunderstorm and pressed herself against my chest. Tonight the storm was in her hands. "Dad?" she called, half choked, half hysterical, as if she wanted me to answer and disappear all at once. "Dad, are you—" I stayed silent. Silence wins fires and arguments both. The flashlight stayed off. I kept one palm against the wall and moved down the carpet's edge I'd tacked myself. The gas trail was irregular. No steady pour pattern, more of a panicked splash from a can handled by someone who wanted flames but lacked the nerve to chart a proper line. A different smell cut through the primary. Citrus. She'd remembered the old trick about muddling accelerant scent with cleaner. People learn from TV and remember half of it. At the end of the hall, the foyer nightlight gave me a ghost of her shape. Hair yanked into an angry knot, shoulders heaving, one hand around the red plastic handle of a 1-gallon can from my shed. She held a book of matches like they weighed 100 pounds. "Dad?" Louder now, desperate. "I know you're up. It doesn't have to be like this." I thought of her first day of kindergarten, the backpack too big for her, our late Margaret's delicate hands combing Laura's hair and saying, "He'll be at the gate when you're done, love. He'll always be there." I tasted the lie and kept moving. A match scraped. The head sparked and died. She wasn't holding her breath. Most people don't know they should. I reached the manifold box beside the laundry room door, flipped the little steel latch I'd installed after Margaret passed, and turned the main gas shutoff because arson isn't just flames. Arson is pressure and air and surprise. Then I slid into the laundry room, grabbed the wool fire blanket from the dryer top, old habit, and wrapped it around my shoulders. One more breath, one more step. The next match stayed lit. Laura cried out on the exhale, brought the flame to the bright ribbon of reek at her feet, and I stepped in, hard, blanket forward. The flames climbed halfway up as her hand jerked toward the floor, then smothered against the weight of wool in my knee. A flare bit my forearm. I hissed through teeth and planted the blanket flat, heel grinding in a circle to kill the tongues that tried to sneak out the edges. The foyer filled with that ugly hush that comes when panic wears itself thin. "Dad?" she whispered. "Turn around," I said. My voice sounded like it did at 3 a.m. call-outs, calm, colder than I felt. Hands where I can see them. She did as I asked because, at the bottom of everything, the child in her still exists. She looked younger in that light. She looked like she did at 16, mascara streaked, mouth hard, God forgive me, too much like her mother in her prideful moments. "I didn't mean," she swallowed. "I just wanted to scare you." "You did," I said. "Let go of the can." She dropped it. I kicked it back against the baseboard with the side of my boot, keeping my eyes on hers, not on the glistening path across the hardwood. Gas behaves the way the person pouring it behaves. Hers had panicked in arcs. That saved my foyer and a good chunk of my life. "I can explain," she said. "You will," I said. I left her in the foyer and went to the kitchen sink. The extinguisher I keep next to the trash can is older than some of the men who used to take my orders, but I maintain my tools. One squeeze to the back of the blanket to wet any hidden embers, then a light dusting along the edges. I kept the windows shut. People love to fling windows wide, forget oxygen is a partner in every bad decision. and I threw towels over the worst puddles to slow the vapor. Then I went to the safe on the study wall, opened it, pulled out the manila folder I've carried for 30 years, and laid it on the kitchen island. I took a clean photo of the foyer from chest height with my phone. Then 2 more from lower angles, including the spill line and the edge of the blanket. There's a rhythm to documenting a scene. You don't get to claim old knowledge unless you practice it daily in your bones. When I returned to her, Laura sat on the stairs. Her hands shook so badly she had them clamped between her knees. She looked past me, everywhere but my face. "I didn't think you'd be home," she whispered. "Nick said—" There it was, a name like a match head. Nick. Her husband of 5 years, whose handshake never felt right, whose wallet always seemed thin when the check came, whose eyes tracked houses like scavengers track the weakest animal in the herd. "What did Nick say?" I asked. "He said, if the house burned, insurance would cover enough to settle everything," she said, the words lurching out in a rush. "The credit cards, his business loan, the tax thing. He said you'd be fine, that you have your pension and the lake cabin, and that we could start over without me," I supplied. The silence that followed was the loneliest I've known since the morning I woke to find Margaret's side of the bed cold and stayed that way forever. "I didn't want to," she said. He told me I was out of time, Dad." That I had to choose. Between what and what, I didn't ask. Some questions break both ways. "Get your purse," I said. "You're going to spend the night in a hotel. You'll text Nick that you're safe and that there was a scare with the wiring. You'll say you left because you were terrified. You'll switch off your phone after you send it. Then you'll sleep. If you can—" "And you?" Her voice was small. "I'm going to clean," I said, "and call a friend." She looked at the foyer, at the blackened remnants of fear and a marriage, and flinched. "Dad, you've done enough for tonight." I softened it with the smallest thing I had left. "Laura, look at me." She did. "I love you," I said, "and I'm furious. Both can be true. Go." She went. The front door clicked. My house exhaled. I called Rios. "You keep odd hours for a retired man," Detective Rios said when she picked up, her voice thick with sleep and humor both. She'd been a rookie in my last 5 years as marshal, quick, stubborn, eyes that saw the detail that matters. We'd kept in touch over coffee and the occasional chess game that always ended in us arguing about whether bishops were overrated. "If I wanted to sleep through my problems, I'd have married again," I said. "I've got fresh pore lines in my foyer and a daughter with shaking hands." The humor vanished in the sound of a body sitting up straight. "Is she okay?" "For now," I said. "I've kept the scene as much as I could. Nobody called the neighbors. No lights outside. I'm asking you to come quiet. No siren, no parade." "You know I don't love quiet," she said. "I know," I said. "I also know you hate sloppy work. Do me a favor, Rios. Bring a kit and your cleanest eyes. I'm on my way." While I waited, I did what I'd done 1,000 times under bad ceilings. I walked. I took notes. The pore line from the front door arced toward the stairs and back again, like she'd been undecided whether to trap me or leave me a path. The highest saturation lay around the base of the newel post. She'd visualized a dramatic stair blaze from some crime show, no doubt. But the wood there was old oak, and I'd treated it twice that spring. Fire has mood swings. Old wood and old men each learn their tricks. I slipped a small plastic evidence bag over the handle of the gas can without touching the plastic itself and labeled it with time and date. Then I lifted a towel's corner and scooped a sample of soaked cotton into a jar Margaret once used for peach jam, and I use now for samples when there's no one around to judge me for my choice of containers. I printed photos from the wireless printer in my study because screens lie while paper stays honest, and I laid them beside the folder on the island. The folder was the thing I hadn't told Laura about. The thing Margaret and I had set up after my last major fire. 3 dead because a landlord saved $30 on smoke detectors. Made me promise I'd never leave my family at the mercy of anyone else's bad decisions. Inside the folder, copies of the deed to my house and the cabin, copies of the trust that put both beyond easy reach. My will, amended after Laura married, copies of the insurance policies with riders that make arson a fool's errand. The beneficiary of the trust is Laura's daughter, my granddaughter Ava, who still believes dandelions are flowers. Laura can't touch the principal without my signature, and if harm came to me by criminal means, the trust locks tighter than a bank vault. I had set all this up not because I expected my child to harm me, but because I'd seen harm use people like puppets. Addiction, desperation, manipulation. None of those words soften a fire. Headlights slid across the kitchen wall. A gentle knock. 3 beats, pause, 2 beats. Our chess code. I let Rios in and handed her coffee. She looked at the foyer, took one long breath through her teeth, and nodded. "I'll take your photos for record, but take more anyway," she said. "The day I trust a retired marshal's eyes more than my own is the day I take up knitting." "You do not have the patience for knitting," I said. "You'd be surprised." She knelt close enough to the floor to make old knees pop, and traced the edges of the pour with her penlight. "She's not good at this." "Thank God," I said. "She who?" "My daughter." Rios didn't look up. I figured. The sadness in the line. We worked together without speaking for a while, the way people who have seen too much fire learn to fill silence. She took swabs. I lifted the blanket for her. She labeled, photographed, sealed. I found myself feeling the old combination of control and helplessness. Control of the facts, helplessness of the heart. She stood finally, stretched her back, and regarded me. "You going to tell me why you didn't call this in loud?" "Because I want the man who talked my daughter into this to say the wrong thing with a wire on him," I said. "And because if I woke the neighborhood, Laura would never forgive herself long enough to turn on him." Rios's mouth twitched. "You always liked the long game." "Who is he?" "Nick Delaney," I said. "Landscaper. Small equipment loans under his cousin's name. Projects that never start. A person who thinks charm is a plan, Delaney," she said, rolling the name like a marble in her mouth. "We've sniffed around him on a pair of remodel fires off Lexington last year. Adjuster pinged us because the timing was cute. Couldn't stick it. Owners swore up and down he'd warned them about electrical issues. Men like that survive on almost, and on girls like my daughter," I said, then regretted my bitterness instantly. Rios nodded, unoffended. "We're not going to fix the whole city tonight," she said. "We can fix this little square of it. You willing to bait him?" "Bait him how?" "You have voicemail?" she asked. "Call him from your phone, put it on speaker. Tell him there was a scare. Tell him you think you left a space heater plugged in and that the house smells funny. Tell him Laura ran to a hotel, won't answer. See if he comes to help, and let him step where he shouldn't step." "You're thinking he'll come sniffing for evidence," I said. "I'm thinking he'll come sniffing for a story he can control," she said. "But if he brings a tool bag and touches what he shouldn't, we'll have more than a story." I looked at the foyer, at the damp blanket, at the towel jar with its slosh of proof. "Let me be cruel for 5 minutes," I said, hating myself for the thrill that ran through me. "Hand me a wire." Rios arched a brow. "You retired from steaming tea kettles, Robert, not undercover work." "Put it on me anyway," I said. "If he says the words, I want to hear them with my own ears." She sighed like a woman who knows better and did it anyway. The transmitter fit under my pajama shirt without much fuss. My heartbeat thudded against it like a man knocking on his own chest. I called Nick. He answered on the 3rd ring, voice bright with that fake warmth that always feels a half step away from insult. "Hey, Bob." Burning the midnight oil? The word made my skin crawl. "There's a smell in the house, Nick," I said. "Laura took off to a hotel. She's scared. I don't know what's going on. Thought maybe the old wiring's finally doing what Margaret warned me it would." "Whoa, whoa," he said. "Slow down." "You okay?" "I'm upright," I said. "Can you come by? You know more about this stuff than I do." He hesitated 2 seconds too long. "Sure thing. I'll be there in 20. "Don't speed," I said, and hung up. Rios tapped the pen cap against her teeth, a habit that drove me crazy when she was new, and now felt like a blessing because it meant her mind was turning where I needed it to. "He's coming with a story," she said. "Let's give him a stage." We put the foyer back to how it had looked, blanket slightly lifted, can where I'd kicked it. She set a small camera on the bookshelf behind the bowl of Margaret's pine cones, another above the archway. The microphones hid in flower arrangements and a ceramic rooster my wife swore would bring us fortune. It never had, but tonight it would bring us something like justice. Then we waited. I poured coffee. The kitchen clock clicked too loudly. My heart ran a sprint while my body pretended at a walk. I thought of Laura at a motel off Route 8, hair wet from a too-hot shower, phone dark on the nightstand, her breath hitching every time a truck passed the window. I thought of Ava asleep in her pink bed across town. I thought of Margaret's hand on my wrist when we signed the trust a lifetime ago. "We don't do this because we expect betrayal," she'd said. "We do it because we recognize the world as it is and we love as we should." Headlights. A car door thumped. A key tested my front lock and failed. He hadn't noticed the deadbolt on the screen. The doorbell rang, 2 brisk presses like a salesman in a hurry. Rios flipped the porch light. I opened the door. Nick looked like a magazine ad for a man with things to sell. Neat beard, nice watch cheaper than it looked, shirt 2 buttons too low. He had a canvas bag over one shoulder that said Delaney Landscaping in green letters, as if grass made him legitimate. He smelled faintly of strong soap and stronger nerves. "Geez," he said, stepping inside without invitation. "Smells like a mechanic shop in here. You leave something on?" "Like what?" I asked. "I don't know," he said, eyes flicking from blanket to can to me, calculating. "Space heater. Candle. You old guys love your scented candles. What happened?" "I found that on the floor," I said, pointing to the can. "I called you. Didn't think the fire department needed to come out if nothing actually caught." "Always best to let professionals handle it," Rios said, stepping from the kitchen with her badge tucked into her pocket and her tone casual as a neighbor's. "I'm Detective Rios. Passing through the area, thought I'd check on Bob when I saw the porch light at this hour." Nick blinked fast. He hadn't planned for company. "Detective," he said smoothly. "Nick Delaney. I'm family." That word almost broke my wire. Family. "Great," Rios said. "Family's helpful. You see anything out of place?" Nick set down his bag with care, eyes on the can. "Mind if I do," Rios said lightly. "Hands off until I've had a look." His smile stayed, but the edges died. Sure, he said. "I just, don't want Bob breathing fumes." "I can take the can out to air, leave it," I said. "I want to talk to my daughter's husband." He cut his eyes to me. A flicker of annoyance he smoothed fast. "This looks like an accident," he said. "Old houses, old problems. You got good insurance, right?" "I told Laura you did." "You told her?" I said. He laughed. "You know how she worries." She asked what would happen if, hypothetically, something bad occurred. I said, hypothetically, insurance covers what it covers. "No big deal." "Hypothetical," Rios said, turning the word gently like she might befriend it. "What kinds of hypotheticals did you two discuss?" Nick shrugged, a studied little motion that said, "Don't worry, I'm in charge." "Normal stuff," he said. "Storm damage, pipes freezing, electrical shorts. Bob's not getting any younger, so it might be prudent to upgrade his panel. Rios said. What's in the bag, Mr. Delaney? Tools, he said. I thought maybe, I could help. Take a look at a socket or two. Open it, she said. His smile thinned. He unzipped the bag with a flourish intended to insult anyone who doubted him. Inside, a voltage tester, duct tape, 2 pairs of work gloves, a small can of orange cleaner, and, at the bottom, almost shy, the stubby remains of a cheap remote ignition pack, the kind people use to turn on Christmas lights from across a lawn. Rios looked at me once, fast, enough for me to catch the heat in her eyes, but not enough for Nick to read, then back to the bag. You use that for landscaping? She asked, nodding at the remote pack. He chuckled. Left over from the holidays, he said. I help neighbors string lights. Generous, she said. She lifted the pack with 2 fingers, dropped it back, sent me a glance that meant, don't move. Then she smiled big. Well, Bob, it looks like you'll live. I'm going to step outside and make a call. Fresh air. Mr. Delaney, mind if I borrow your phone a sec? Mine's acting up. Nick hesitated a heartbeat, then handed it over because men like him hate the word no when they think it'll get them caught. Rios walked onto the porch, phone in hand. Nick turned to me, smile gone. You talked to Laura? He asked. She sent a message, I said. Said she's at a hotel. He stopped. Revised. Good. She was upset. People say things when they're upset. Stupid things. I told her not to bother you with anxiety about policies and such. You know how the news freaks people out. All those fires on TV. Laura tried to set my house on fire tonight, I said. You know anything about that? His face did a tiny trick I'm not sure he knew it could do. The muscles around his mouth tried to smile and couldn't find the signal. That's insane, he said. Laura would never. She's not. You must have misunderstood. What about that remote? I asked softly. You misunderstand that too? He curled his lip. You going to lecture me, old man? No, I said. I'm going to listen. He huffed. You want the truth? Your daughter's drowning. Bills, panic, all of it. She doesn't listen to me. You never did either. You two are the same, stubborn and sentimental. I told her if, hypothetically, the old-timer's place had an electrical fire, nobody would suffer. Insurance would pay out. We'd all be better for it. You could finally move someplace safe. She'd sleep at night. I could pay off the pickup you bought with cash you didn't have and keep your bookie from cracking your ribs, I said. His eyes went cold. Watch your mouth. I've watched fires turn breath to ash, I said. I can handle your mouth. He stared at me and saw, finally, what he'd missed when he thought I was a man who lived by the softness of his love for his only child. The man I was before Margaret's illness and Ava's drawings and the way grief turns your bones to wet chalk. He saw the man who walked lines of charcoal and named what had happened by the shape left behind. You're not going to tell anyone, Nick said after a moment, almost kindly. We're family. I just did, Rios said from the doorway. She stepped back into the foyer, her badge out, not a neighbor now but the city's hand. 2 uniforms materialized behind her as if the house had grown them. Nicholas Delaney, you're under arrest for attempted arson, conspiracy to commit insurance fraud, and whatever else the night coughs up. Nick's eyes flicked to the bag, to the can, to the blanket, his little stage, and he realized, with a precise clarity I could admire, that he'd walked onto mine. He spun for the door, but Rios was faster and had younger knees than either of us will have again. The cuffs clicked. Every sound in the house arranged itself around that metal punctuation. You can't prove anything, he said, back to bluster. Rios angled her head at me. He asked you to imagine a hypothetical again? She asked. He did, I said. He's fond of them. Juries hate hypotheticals, she said. They took him out into the jittery blue of a summer night about to break. I stood in my ruined foyer and listened to the quiet that follows when the worst thing didn't happen. Rios remained. She didn't speak for a long while. Neither did I. When she finally did, her voice was softer than I'd ever heard it. "She'll need a lawyer," Rios said, "and a doctor who understands the kind of debt that makes gasoline look holy." "I'll get her both," I said. "You're pressing charges?" "Yes," I said. "If I don't, she won't get the kind of help that sticks. If I do, a judge might give her a program she can't wiggle out of when Nick whispers in her ear. And I want a restraining order so tight he can feel it in his sleep." "Good," Rios said. "You're a better father than most of the ones I see at 3 a.m. Tonight, I feel like a man who taught his daughter how to start a campfire the summer she turned 12, I said, and forgot to teach her what to do if the wind shifts. "Tonight you remembered," she said. I sent Rios away with my thanks and a chess rematch we both pretended would be friendly. Then I opened every window in the house and let the night in. I worked until dawn the way I did in the old days, mopping and scrubbing and sealing the jar and labeling my shame alongside the evidence. The sun climbed the hill behind my backyard and scattered the shadows into pieces small enough to handle. At 9, I drove to the motel. Laura opened the door with eyes that had done too much crying to find more tears. She looked past me into the parking lot as if Nick might materialize between the faded paint lines. "He's gone," I said. "For now. There will be hearings and papers and all the little humiliations men like him specialize in. But he's gone from us." She folded. Not a dramatic collapse, not the kind actresses perform when their heels break. Just a slow surrender into the chair by the window, forehead to palm, the sound a person makes when they've reached the border of themselves and stepped 1 foot over. "I'm sorry," she said into her hand. "I know," I said. "I'm angry." "I know that too," she nodded. "We can hold both," I said, "and still decide what to do next." "What do we do next?" she asked. "We call Ava's school and tell them she's going to spend a few days with me at the lake cabin where the air smells like pine instead of bleach," I said. "We call a lawyer I trust and a counselor who will ask you hard questions you won't want to answer. We sit with your mother's picture and tell her the truth, because lying to the dead is a habit that will ruin you. Then we tell the judge the same truth. After that, we build something that doesn't burn when a bad man coughs." She laughed once, ugly and grateful. "You always talk like that," she said, "like a sermon written by a carpenter." "I used to be a fire marshal," I said. "We talk in cause and effect. And I built this house with my hands. Some metaphors stick." She went quiet, then reached into her purse. She took out a folded sheet of paper and handed it to me with fingers that shook. "What's this?" I asked. "The policy Nick had me sign," she said. "He said it was just updating contact info after Mom died." I signed without reading. "I know." I unfolded it. It was an application for an increased coverage amount and a beneficiary change request. It had my name spelled wrong and his spelled just right. The agent's signature looked like a copy of a copy, a sloppy fraud. "We'll give this to Rios," I said. "She'll let it eat him alive from the paper outward." Laura nodded. "He said we were out of time," she said, voice barely above the conditioner's whir. "He said the men he owed weren't patient. He said if I loved him, I'd help us all. He said a house is just wood and old memories. He said you'd be fine anywhere. A house is your mother's laugh in the stairwell," I said. "It's the nick in the banister from the day you tripped carrying your prom shoes. It's the pencil marks on the pantry door where we measured you until you stopped asking because you were sure you weren't getting any taller." She pressed her lips together hard to hold everything inside. "I hate him," she said. "You hate what he made you do?" I corrected. "What you allowed him to make you do. Hate is cheap. Repair is expensive." "Can we afford it?" she asked with a little smile that cost her too much. "We put the house in trust years ago," I said. For Ava. I'm trustee. If anything happens to me by a crime, the trust locks. It was never yours to lose. You can hate me for that too. Her eyes widened. Mom, knew? She insisted, I said. It was the fight we had once that made us both laugh at the end. She said love isn't leaving your child the weight of your money. It's leaving them protections they can't spend. Laura stared at me like she was meeting a stranger with her father's face. I don't deserve your kindness, she said. The nice thing about being old, I said, is that I stopped giving out what people deserve and started giving what I can live with. Today that's help. Tomorrow it might be a lecture you dislike. She nodded. I can live with that. We went to the cabin because men who used to run toward red light need pine and still water to steady their hands. Ava was waiting on the porch like a small lighthouse, hair wild, backpack open to show me every stuffed animal she'd smuggled for the weekend. She looked at her mother with that serious way children have, then wrapped her arms around Laura's leg and squeezed as if she could keep her from evaporating. We made sandwiches. We sat on the dock with our feet in water that kept the secrets of 100 summers. Laura told me about the first time Nick made her feel like the ground had disappeared. She told me about the loan she hid because she wanted me to think she'd made good choices. She told me that the night she came home and the bedroom smelled like another woman, she convinced herself it was a new detergent. She told me about laughing at his bad jokes because silence scared her more. When the sun turned the lake to polished copper, I pulled out the folder and added one more paper to it. A handwritten note witnessed by Rios later that if anything happened to me, the cabin and the house stayed in trust until Ava turned 30 and could tell the difference between a man who offers love and a man who offers an alibi. The hearings came. Nick's lawyer wore a tie that must have cost $1,000. Nick wore contrition like an expensive shirt that didn't fit. Rios's chain of custody sang. The lab's report on the accelerant harmonized. The little remote ignition pack crooned like a canary. The judge listened with a face carved from the same wood as my banister. Laura stood, voice steady because she wanted the steady more than she wanted mercy, and told the truth. She took the program the court ordered and did the meetings other people joke about until the jokes didn't make sense anymore. She didn't ask me for money. I gave it anyway, in the form of childcare, rides, meals that made the house smell like Margaret for an hour at a time. Nick took a plea because men like him are brave when the room is dark and you're asleep, and less so under fluorescent lights where the paper cuts back. He went away long enough for silence to grow in Laura's head where his voice had lived, and long enough for creditors to learn he was no longer a mailbox with legs. He will write to her. She will not read. I replaced the foyer boards, not because I wanted to erase the night, but because I wanted to choose what stayed. I left a piece of scorched underlayment behind the baseboard where no one can see it but me. When I dust there, yes, I dust. Margaret insisted, and old habits also keep houses standing. I touch the char with one fingertip and remember both the danger and the mercy. A year later, Laura and I stood at the foot of the stairs with a measuring tape while Ava insisted we record her new height for science. We argued about whether she'd grown half an inch or 3/4 and compromised at 5/8 because we are a family, and that's what we do now. The house smelled like glue and lemon oil. The sun poured through the front windows like it had always meant to. When night fell, Laura stayed for coffee. She looked at me over the rim of her mug and said, "There was a moment, Dad. Match in my hand, blanket on your shoulders, and your face. God, your face. There was a moment where I could see two futures, one where I kept going and everything burned, one where I stopped and let you catch me." "There's a third," I said. "What?" she asked. "One where you stop yourself before you ever pick up the can," I said. "We're working toward that one now." She smiled without much light but with a lot of truth. "I forgot you used to be a fire marshal," she said, teasing me because she could, because we'd earned the right to tease again. "I didn't," I said. I sleep light. Later, much later, when the house was quiet and the lake folded itself into dark steel, I lay awake and counted off the old rules we taught rookies. Air, fuel, heat, chain reaction. Remove one, you kill the fire. I thought about people and their worst versions of those four things. Anger is air, money is fuel, fear is heat, secrets is the chain. I thought about what it takes to undo the chemistry of a life heading toward flame. Then I turned on my side, looked at the square of light from the hallway, and did the thing that has saved more rooms than any extinguisher I ever carried. I listened. For breath. For slosh. For the quiet steps of someone I love choosing the right path down a dark hall. For the sound of a house deciding to stand.
My grandpa's words really happened. I believe him. If you want more true tales stories like this, hit subscribe.